Okay, I just saw these pickups from Gibson's website. They put this up at the beginning of this year, January 2024, but they're actually selling these 1959 humbuckers, which they sell for $1,000, and they're limited to 1,000 sets each. So, yeah, $1,000 pickups. I think the last time we've seen pickups this expensive was Seymour Duncan's Zephyr pickups, which are pretty special pickups because they're like cryogenically treated and they have silver wiring, I think, like pure silver wiring. So there's at least some justification for Seymour Duncan Zephyr pickups being like $1,000. But these, uh, I don't know what the justification for these are. $1,000. I mean, you can take a look at it. It says the most accurate recreations of legendary PAF pickups. Obviously, they're a PAF replica, but the most accurate, I mean, look at any other pickup in this video, right, for PAFs. They all claim to be the most accurate. So I don't know, like how accurate can you be, right? Like for PAF pickups, they were pretty much all over the place in terms of like windings and stuff, what material, what magnet material they're using. Like how can you be the most accurate? Yeah, it says using a combination of 3D scanning, scientific analysis, reverse engineering, specifications. Okay, so what about that warrants $1,000? I don't know, because you can find any of these other third-party pickup makers doing the same thing for a lot less. So yeah, like any of these other manufacturers in this video actually can make a PAF replica for a lot less, and they do these things as well. And maybe not all of them, but still, like how accurate can you get, right? Like for PAF pickups, because they're not like original PAF pickups are not that like consistent in the first place. I think part of it is this special case, this lifting case, which looks kind of like a mini guitar case but for pickups, which is really unnecessary anyways. I mean, this is like for a collector, I believe. Yeah, it's 1,000 sets, really only for collectors, because why else would you care about this case? Why else would you need this case if you're it's just for display and collecting essentially. If you put this in a guitar, you have no need for these. You have no need for this case if you put this in a guitar and use it, right? So yeah, it has this presentation case, which I think is what's driving, part of the reason is driving the cost of this up. Vintage white booty rate bobbins, okay, you have lots of other pickups like that as well. Alnico 4 is interesting. Like Alnico 4, like if you're going to be the most accurate, is that really Alnico 4? Because like you've seen a lot of other PAF pickups on the market with Alnico 2, Alnico 5, but Alnico 4 is interesting. I'm not like how is that the most accurate, right? If Alnico 4 was the most accurate PAF, shouldn't we be seeing more Alnico 4 PAFs out in the market instead of like Alnico 2 and Alnico 5? So I don't know. Everything else unpotted is nice, right? It's always nice to have the that's vintage spec, and I do think that unpotted does help the dynamics open up a bit more, so that's good. That's unpotted, but that's the minimum of what we would expect for this kind of price, right? Like that's something that you can ask a lot of other third-party pickup makers to do anyways. True historic nickel, they actually analyze the formulation of the nickel, so I guess there's that. Everyone uses 4-2 AWG plain enamel wire for these, so that's just to be expected. The DC resistance 7.7K for the rhythm, 8.6K for treble is what we would expect for vintage output PAF. The most historically accurate PAF ever made, unbalanced coils. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, $1,000. Let's look at the other expensive pickup makers out there in the market. Ron Ellis or Tom Holmes pickups or throwback pickups. The Virgil Arlo, I think, is another guy. Like these guys all make really expensive pickups. Actually, none of them are actually over $1,000 though. There may be like throwback, I know it's like 750 or something like that. And those are actually wound on the vintage machines, the same machines that Gibson used. These are not wound on the same machines necessarily. I don't see them saying anything about that. I think Seymour Duncan has one of those Lisona winders, and then Throwback does as well. This one is not wound on one of those vintage machines, and what's interesting is it doesn't even have any blurb about being hand wound. So so yeah, it doesn't say anything about being hand wound at all actually, which is another thing that's kind of interesting. Like $1,000, it better be hand wound, right? I guess the only other pickups we've seen is like Fender with the Abigail Ybarra pickups, which are really expensive as well. Those are close to $1,000, but that's actually wound by a very special person that worked at Fender for many, many years, for like 60, 70 years. She's been winding pickups, right? Actually, maybe like 50, 60 years, right? And she retired. So you're not going to see Abigail Ybarra pickups anymore, and those are wound by one single person. And those, I guess, for the limited type of stuff, like there's a reason why Abigail Ybarra pickups are really expensive, because she's no longer winding pickups, and she was there at Fender for like, 50, 60 years. So that kind of makes sense for the history connection there. But this one, you don't know who it's wound by. It doesn't even say that's hand wound. It doesn't say it's wound by the vintage machines. And how is it the most accurate when it's Alnica 4? Like I don't see many other PAFs being Alnica 4. So I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. And it comes with a case that honestly just for collectors. So to me, this is it's a bit of a marketing scam thing. Yeah, like, okay, I get like Ron Ellis and Throwback, and yeah, like tone specific. Like some of these other guys charge a lot for their pickups. I don't think any of them would charge $1,000, and plus they're all hand wound. And even the Seymour Duncan Zephyr pickups at least have some reason to be close to that price, right? They have the cryogenic treatment, and they have the silver, pure silver wire and stuff. This doesn't have any of that. So, yeah, it's pretty much just a scam in my opinion. But wow, big balls from Gibson to be charging $1,000 for a set of their humbucking pickups, which don't look that special to me, honestly. So, yeah, honestly, it doesn't look that special to me. Just this comes in this nice box. I mean, at least with like Abigail Ybarra and Tom Holmes and Ron Ellis and those guys, like they're wound by a special person, right? Here is not even wound by a special person. So what's special about these, right? Some guy in the shop doing it that you don't know who it is. Like, yeah. So I thought while we're on the subject of expensive $1,000 pickups, let's just go over some of the other expensive pickups I talked about already. Didn't actually go through these before, I don't think, in my other video, but yeah, Seymour Duncan Zephyr. This is one I already mentioned a bit. Yeah, they come with silver wire, pure silver wire, which is kind of unique because most pickups they come with copper wire. So yeah, this is silver wire. I guess it's kind of unique, and yeah, they also cryogenically treated as well, and you can see their prices here on Reverb. Now I'm looking on Reverb for all these because they're not really sold. None of these pickups, except for Ron Ellis, I believe, are sold brand new anymore. They're kind of like out of stock and hard to find. But yeah, Seymour Duncan Zephyrs are definitely Seymour Duncan's most expensive pickups that they ever sold, and they no longer sell them for whatever reason. I guess they are making some decent amount of cash and bucks on these, given how much they charge. But they are kind of unique as well. You could take a look at their humbucker, for example, here. This one's selling for actually a relatively reasonable price of, this is about like $700 US. Yeah, so this one, Zephyr series, is basically born from Seymour Duncan. One of their vice presidents wanted to come up with a series of pickups that basically did not care about the price. Like they didn't have to hit a price for these, and they just wanted to make the most expensive pickup they could with the best materials they could. And they use silver wire here, as I mentioned, which is a better transmitter. Yeah, it's a better transmitter than copper when it comes to carrying audio signals. When you're talking about like high-end audio stuff, like audio cables, a lot of people pay expensive amounts of money. We're talking like hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars for audio cables, and the most expensive ones are going to be pure silver, because you usually, if you pay like expensive cables, you buy expensive cables, they're like 99.99999 whatever percent oxygen-free copper, right? Then if you move up to the highest end cables, the ones where audiophiles like shell out a ton of money for, those are pure silver. So this is what they're doing here with the Seymour Duncan Zephyrs. They also use bimetallic pole pieces of 440C stainless steel around a pure nickel core, glass fiberfill nylon bobbins, which are more resistant to microphonics than plastic. Then they cryogenically treat them. So yeah, there's actually a reason why these pickups are pretty expensive. And I would say, like, out of all the expensive pickups in this video, these ones have the most reason to be expensive because they actually use different materials and different construction. The other ones being more like a vintage thing. So yeah, I can look at that. So that was the Zephyr. We have a neck and a humbucker. These aren't sold anymore, like I said, so you can only find them on Reverb for now. But yeah, silver wire, bimetallic pull pieces, cryogenic treatment, glass fill nylon bobbins, or fiberglass reinforced nylon coils. Yeah, like this stuff is actually like out of all the expensive pickups in the video, these ones actually kind of have a reason to be expensive. The other ones are just kind of like hype, I guess. But for these ones, yeah, they actually have a reason. Like look at this one, the Zephyr Strat set, brand new, costs about $1,500 US on Reverb here. That's not the official price when it was released. It was like $1,000 when it was released, but because this is Reverb, and you can't find them anymore, so they're selling for a bit more. Yeah, I haven't tried Seymour Duncan Zephyrs. Can't claim to have tried them. I've only heard them on YouTube clips, but yeah, these are definitely among the most expensive pickups that you can buy on the market. The Seymour Duncan Zephyrs, and Tom Holmes is another one I mentioned. And Tom Holmes is, I believe he was one of Gibson's, one of the guys that Gibson went to back in the day to talk about making reproduction PAFs and stuff. And he has his own cult following, I guess, which is why his pickups are so expensive. And apparently there's a long waiting list, and you can't contact him easily and stuff. I don't even know he's still winding them, like you basically have to go through like a lot to get to him, kind of like how Alexander Dumble made the Dumble amps. You had to go through like some special process to talk to him. Yeah, with Tom Holmes, I guess you had to be on some special list to even talk to him. But yeah, 1,500. So this is approximately $1,200 US for this humbucker. Now I'm not sure exactly how much they are brand new, but you guys can see Tom Holmes pickups are quite expensive. They're even selling for as much as 3,000 Canadian dollars, which is like $2,500 US, right? Yeah, that's ridiculous. $2,500 US for a pickup? I mean, wow. Like you can buy USA made guitar, like Stratocaster, maybe not Les Paul, but you can buy like, yeah, US made Fender Stratocaster for that money. Wow, that's ridiculous for Tom Holmes pickup. The Holy Grail, 7.5, 8.7. I mean, that makes these humbuckers, these $1,000 Gibson humbuckers, that makes this seem like a good deal. These $2,500 Tom Holmes PAF pickups, how good could they be for $2,500? That's definitely the most expensive pickup I've seen so far on Reverb. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So anyways, Tom Holmes, there's some kind of like cult following based on Tom Holmes pickups, because he's so hard to find and get in contact with, and he is like, you know, one of those Gibson pickup gurus from back in the day. I don't know. Someone explained to me why these cost so much money, because this is kind of ridiculous. They're not even using special materials like the Zephyrs. The Seymour Duncan Zephyrs at least have some reason to be expensive because they use special materials. But Tom Holmes, why are you charging $2,500 US for this stuff? Come on. Like that makes the Gibson $1,000 humbuckers look like a relatively good deal. Right? And then you got Ron Ellis, which actually I went to the Ron Ellis page before, right? So these are kind of like Throwback and Ron Ellis really are kind of like the top end when it comes to third-party pickup makers that you can kind of readily get, I guess. So yeah, Ron Ellis pickups are generally like $700, $800, fairly expensive. But I already went on the Ron Ellis page already, actually, to talk to you about these pickups in my other video. So yeah, Ron Ellis pickups, like out of standard production, like readily available pickups, Ron Ellis and Throwback are probably the most expensive, because some of these other pickups like the Zephyr, Tom Holmes, and these other ones are just kind of hard to get. But the Ron Ellis ones are readily available production wise, but yeah, you do have to pay like a pretty penny for them. And again, nothing really special about these in terms of construction, other than just the reputation, I guess, the rep. They're used by Brad Paisley, David Gilmour, Julian Lange. Yeah, so I guess just other than the rep, that's the only reason why Ron Ellis is so expensive. Like I don't see anything special materials about them. And we can look at the Throwback pickups as well. Throwback also goes up to $1,000. PAF repro pickups. These are also production-wise pretty easy to get, but like you have to pay like $750 for these. Now these I already kind of went over their website and explained and talked about these pickups already in my other video, but the reason why these are expensive is because they're using the original vintage whiners, and all their stuff is like dead accurate in terms of the materials, which I guess is similar to what Gibson is doing. But Throwback is actually using the vintage winders on top of that, And they also make it clear that these are all vintage formulation for the magnets, and they're all hand wound. That's something that the Gibson humbuckers didn't explicitly say, but for the throwbacks, yeah, they explicitly say they're all hand wound on the vintage winder, and the Alnico magnets are vintage formulations and stuff. So I think probably if you're looking for the most dead accurate PAFs, throwback is probably a good choice. But yeah, throwback and Ron Ellis are probably the most expensive, like ready for production pickups on the market today. And then talking about some similar to Tom Holmes and these kind of like out of, let's say, not easy to get pickups are expensive because of demand and hype, I guess. So Virgil Arlo is another example. Like he's kind of similar to Tom Holmes. Like you can't find his pickups readily because he retired from pickup winding. He's this like really mysterious guy winding pickups somewhere in some cabin somewhere in some rural part of the United States. I don't know, but there's some mystique associated with him. So his pickups are not readily available. You can't easily find them. So just like Tom Holmes, for Virgil Arlo, his pickups fetch ridiculous prices as well because they're not easy to find. You can't readily get them. So these have a retail price of $1,200 apparently, which I guess is not too different from this price here. Actually, this is might be actually even a little bit cheaper. This is like $1,000 US. But yeah, this one is based off of Mark Knopfler's tone, interestingly. Okay. But yeah, originally released in 2022. I don't know when Virgil Arlo stopped winding pickups, but 2022, was that his last year that he was winding pickups? Yeah, so anyways, these ones are, oh my god, this one's like $1,500 US. The 1952 Virgil Arlo Telecaster set. Okay, so these are white label, I see. So the black label ones are the ones that are sold by Tone Specific, I believe. Tone Specific being like another pickup winder that had ties with Virgil Arlo. But these ones are the original Virgil Arlos that are not the black label ones. These are white label ones that are actually from Virgil Arlo, not from Tone Specific, and they're more expensive. These are $1,500. Yeah. Again, I don't see what's special about these other than they're just like wound by a specific guy with a lot of hype and mystique behind them. So yeah, I mean you can look at these white label ones are definitely more expensive. This one's around $1,100. Yep. So yeah, Virgil Arlo is kind of like Tom Holmes. He's this like pickup winder that's very hard to get pickups from him because he doesn't really wind them anymore, and some kind of hype and mystique was created about him, about his pickups, and therefore they're selling for ridiculous prices. Oh my god, this one is selling for 2,000. Again, this is ridiculous, $2,000 or something US. Yep. I mean, these ones and Tom Holmes. Tom Holmes still takes the cake though with the $2,500 US pickups, but Virgil Arlo comes pretty close if you look at these high-end PAF repros. Yep. And then let's Seymour Duncan Zephyrs, I would say at least have some justification, not really, but some justification because of the materials. Throwback and Ron Ellis, I guess, they're production-wise, they're still making these, and they're just below $1,000. But Virgil Arlo and Tom Holmes are basically just based on the hype and the mystique behind the men who are winding these. So that's why they're expensive. Now, last but not least, I'm going to go to the biggest one in terms of mystique, in terms of a single person winding pickups, and that's Abigail Ybarra from Fender, who actually wound pickups back in the 1950s for Fender, and that's where her mystique comes from. Now it's very, very hard to find her pickups. Actually, you can only 3 of these actually are actually Abigail Ybarra's. So this one's actually kind of cheap. But yeah, look at this one, $2,500 US for a set of Abigail Ybarra. In terms of Fender pickups, right? In terms of we're talking about PAFs or humbucking pickups, I think Virgil Arlo and Tom Holmes definitely makes the most expensive aftermarket pickups that you can find. In terms of aftermarket prices, but Abigail Ybarra being kind of a Fender legend, right? If you're looking for Stratocaster pickups, she's like the holy grail. That's because she wound pickups since the 1950s for Fender, and because the 1950s and 60s are associated with a bunch of legendary guitar players like Clapton and Hendrix and all those guys. That's why Abigail Ybarra has so much hype and mystique behind her. and she's been retired for over 10 years, so she no longer winds pickups. And so these are all limited pickups from her. These are from 2001, looks like. Yeah, so all of Abigail Ybarra's pickups are limited, essentially. She only winds Fender style pickups, so like Stratocasters. She might have done like a few Telecasters, but yeah, she mostly does like Fender Stratocaster type pickups that I've seen. Like this one is from 2004. You got to make sure that they're actually signed by her. Yeah, they got to be actually signed and dated by her. Now I'm not sure. These ones are signed AY and dated. Okay, I'm looking for the ones that are actually signed by like her full name, Abby. Yeah. So there's like some confusion because some of her pickups are actually just signed AY, and I don't think these might not have been actually wound by her. I'm not sure. These might have been just supervised by her. I know there's some Fender Custom Shop 69s that are kind of just signed, initialed by her, but it's not exactly the same as wound by her. Now the ones that you know for sure are wound by her are these ones that are actually signed Abby, not AY. So the initialed ones, I'm not actually sure. That might be why they're cheaper, but for sure the ones that are signed her her name Abby here and dated, these are for sure wound by herself. So yeah, these ones are the most expensive. And in terms of Fender pickups on the aftermarket, yeah, the Abigail Ybarras are pretty much the holy grail. They're again, in terms of actual like materials and stuff like that and how it sounds. Now, I don't think there's anything justifying this price, but it's more like if you buy Abigail Ybarra, it's a piece of history, right? You're buying a pair of pickups made by someone who wound pickups for Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck and those guys. So yeah, like it's basically just getting the part of the history of being associated with this person, this historical person. So that's pretty much it. Just wanted to go over some of the other really expensive pickups I've seen on the aftermarket. They don't make them anymore. So yeah, so these Gibson pickups are expensive. They're $1,000. They're limited edition. Yeah, there's probably nothing really justifying this. But then if you look at the other pickups that are really expensive on the market, Seymour Duncan Zephyrs, yeah, these ones not made in production anymore, but they have some pretty interesting like techniques actually in creating them in some special materials like the silver wire. So that's pretty interesting, at least something to help justify the price. Throwback and Ron Ellis, these ones are kind of just production expensive pickups. Again, I'm not sure, like it's just kind of like the vintage accuracy thing, I guess, is why these ones are so expensive. I guess Ron Ellis because of some of the celebrities that use them. Virgil Arlo, Tom Holmes, and Abigail Ybarra. These three are probably the most expensive aftermarket pickups in general because these three people don't wind pickups very much anymore or at all. And they're fairly hard to find as a result. And they have a lot of mystique and hype associated with them. So in terms of aftermarket, yeah, I would say these three people, Virgil Arlo, Tom Holmes, and Abigail Ybarra are going to be probably your most expensive aftermarket pickups. And it's mostly based on just the hype and the reputation of the people winding them. Not, of course, not because they're actually worth that much, but because of the reputation of the people behind them. So anyways, just wanted to do a video on these really expensive pickups that I saw, starting from the Gibson humbucker, $1,000 humbuckers, and then looking at some of the other expensive pickups on the market. So, yep, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're into pickups, let me know what you guys think of what I said. So, yeah, that's it, guys. As always, thanks for watching. If you listen to this little video about different pickups, then yeah. Again, I'm glad you guys have listened all the way through. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I like talking about guitar pickups. It's just kind of like a hobby of mine, and really just kind of interesting to look at some of these really expensive pickups that I would never be able to afford. Yeah, so yeah, so essentially when doing some more research about Tom Holmes, the reason why his humbuckers are so expensive is essentially based on his long reputation. He was one of the first, I guess, boutique aftermarket pickup winders. I mean, you know, there's Larry DiMarzio, Seymour Duncan, and everyone, but Tom Holmes was certainly, he's certainly been in the business a long time, since the early 70s, I believe, so that dates back quite a bit. So I think among that time, when Seymour Duncan and DiMarzio were making these high output humbuckers, Tom Holmes was one of the few that was actually making these vintage output humbuckers or PAF replicas, and he was really one of the very first boutique pickup winders to make these replicas. So I think that goes a long way in explaining why his reputation is like that. So to make a correction, he didn't actually work at Gibson. He helped design a pickup winder for Gibson for their reissues back in the 90s. And he worked for this repair shop called Gruns, I think. When he was working at this repair shop, apparently a lot of different PAFs from vintage like 1958, 59, 60 Les Pauls would come in, and he would kind of dissect them and kind of figure out, I guess through the process of, working there for like 20 years or something, he figured out the type of magnets they were using, which apparently were Alnico 4, and he kind of just dissected them, and then he managed to get the correct materials, and then he apparently produces all his own parts too. So yeah, all his parts are done in-house, and his magnets are made to his specs and everything. So that's part of the reason why he's so expensive, but of course the other part is just his hype reputation, the fact that he's not really winding pickups much anymore, or you have to wait an absurdly long time to get it from him. So but yeah, $2,500 is way too much, right? Or even just this one. This one is like a relatively cheap one for only 1,200 US. But still, like, when you're talking about guitar pickups, like, at most, I think I would pay maybe 200 for them. But if you're over 200, I really don't think that, like, even 200 is a lot of money, right? But I understand that it takes time to wind these pickups and everything. And if it's a one-man shop, there's a lot of overhead. You have to sell them in bulk and volume to actually get, like, a decent amount of profit on them. So I understand, like, maybe $200 I think is probably the max I'd go, but like, this is ridiculous, right? Yeah, any of these like pickup makers, Ron Ellis, Throwback, and Holmes, all these guys, like, yeah, when you're charging this much for a pickup, it's really like you're trying to get the people who are really have more money to spend on these type of things. They care about the historical accuracy and stuff like that, which most people don't care about, actually. Like, most guitar players, like, if you're just a typical guitar player going to gigs and stuff, most guitar players, I would think, even if they have money to spend on gear, would probably be spending on the amplifier, guitar, pedals. The pickups, yeah, I mean, some people really care about pickups, but it's not something like the audience would care about, or like, even, it's something that only the player would care about, right? And it's only if you're really into this stuff. Like, yeah, if you're like a brand new, like, guitar player who hasn't played for very long, just starting out playing gigs and stuff, or even if you're a veteran, like, you might not care about this. Just use whatever stock pickups are in your guitar, or you use a cheap pair of pickups that you can easily get from GHS or Mojo Tone or whatever. And yeah, those are usually good enough. I mean, like, pickups are pickups, right? They have to do their job and work, and I don't think there's that much variation in the pickups where you have to get to the point where you charge $1,000 for a pickup. Like, there cannot be that much variation in a guitar pickup, right? Like, and I think part of it is, like, people have when people hear expensive pickups, they tend to think it sounds better because that's what they expect. So it's kind of a psychological thing, right? It sounds better because that's what they expect. That's because they paid a lot of money, so they expect it to sound better, and so it does. It's like a psychological thing. So I think that's part of it. I personally would never spend this much money on a guitar pickup. Most I've ever spent is $200. I think that was the TV Jones and Duotrons that I picked up, and also the Lawler Goldfoil pickups that I had before. Those were like $200 each, and that's the most I would ever spend on a pickup. So that's like $400 sets, right? That's like the most I would ever spend, and that's a bit of that's because I had a luxury to afford them, but normally most people do not care about this type of stuff, and those are special pickups too. Like the Polyano Duotrons are pretty like interesting design pickups, and the gold foils as well for Lawler. But these ones are just, how many ways can you make a humbucker? How many ways can you make a PAF? There's so many aftermarket pickup makers that are doing that. So I don't know, man. Like, never pay like $1,000 or $1,200 or $2,500 for these. It's just ridiculous. Like, yeah, it's pickups, and there's no secret art here. It's something that they made in 1950s, 1960s. Why can't we duplicate that with today's technology? There's no reason you can't. And yeah, can you imagine like someone in the audience being like, man, that guitarist, he's playing with Alnico 5 magnets, and that's just not vintage accurate, man. I can't enjoy this music at all. I gotta have Alnico 2s. I gotta have the plain enamel wire. Get that poly wires, you know, shit out of my like out of my face, you know. Like, come on. That's just ridiculous, right? It's like, oh man, this sound sucks, man. He's using the wrong kind of wire, the wrong kind of vintage. I mean, magnet formulations. It's just can't enjoy this music, man. I gotta have the accurate 1959 PAF magnets with the wire, hand winding. Oh man, you know you can't be machine wound. It's too harsh. You gotta have the hand wound. Like, nope, it's potted. You gotta have the unpotted. Yeah, more dynamics. So it's just oh, it's getting into a ridiculous level, right? And Gibson themselves is playing on this because they you know market the true historics. You know, the Les Paul, you got to have the exact plastic formulations and everything. Yeah, the formulation, the plastic parts have to be chemically recreated, and the nickel plates and covers have to be like exact same composition of nickel and stuff. They call it true historic nickel for the covers. It's getting really to a ridiculous level. Like, it's just ridiculous to me. So yeah, no, nobody's in the audience is going to care. This is just for the guitar player. No one else is going to care about this shit. And yeah, like at the end of the day, it's something that only you care about as a guitar player. The audience isn't going to care. Nobody in the audience is going to say, wow, I wish this guy was using a more accurate vintage reproduction of a PAF, otherwise I'm not enjoying the music, you know? You got to have the unpotted humbucker with Alnico 4, Alnico 2 magnets with, you know, vintage braided wire and stuff, like vintage formulation. Oh no, the sound is too harsh. It must be that the magnet formulations aren't as correct as before. Like, come on, right? Like, yeah, I don't know who can tell that difference. It's like you're listening, you're in a band, the drummer's playing, right? Everyone's on the stage. Who's gonna tell that difference? Nobody's gonna care. The audience is not gonna care. Using like vintage formulations or magnets, whatever, the right kind of wire in your pickups. Oh, plain enamel. Oh, poly wire. Nope, you gotta have form bar wire. Like, nobody's gonna care about this kind of vintage accuracy. It's only the guitar player that cares about that. Which is why like explaining it to non-guitar players is difficult, right? It's like, why do you got to spend so much on this? Why do you got to spend so much money on this, right? Like, imagine you're like trying to justify this to your wife, spending this much money on pickups, and she wouldn't understand. Oh, but it has to be. But this one's more expensive because it's exactly accurate to the magnets and the composition of the metals, and the alloy is exact same as used in the 1950s and stuff. Like, they're not going to understand that, right? So anyways, it's just a whole bunch of marketing. I know the people out there, boutique winders and big companies like Gibson, are taking advantage of people who obviously they care about this stuff a lot more than most people do. It's a really niche thing. And hey, you know, it's really just for the satisfaction of yourself. If you want to use something that's very vintage accurate and you're willing to pay like this much money for it, you know, all the power to you. But that's why the companies are taking advantage of people like that. So it's like audiophiles are kind of the same bunch, right? With cables and stuff like that. Like, wow, gotta have the silver cable, silver conductors, right? 99.9999% oxygen-free copper isn't good enough. Gotta pay like hundreds of dollars more for the pure silver. Just gotta have it, right? Beryllium-coated drivers or something like. Yep. With people, when it comes to audio, because it's so subjective, you know, like everyone's gonna say, you know, if you can tell a difference, right, between the sound, that's something that only you can tell, right? Not, I don't think that there's something that where everyone in the world can tell the exact same difference in sound, and everyone has different ears, so that's the thing. It's like if you hear a difference in sound, that's just you, man. Yeah, like I have a friend who I just bought a new pair of monitor audio gold 100 speakers, which are like $2,000 US speakers, and he couldn't tell the difference between those speakers and his Logitech $100 Logitech computer speakers. He couldn't tell the difference. I had $2,000 monitor audio gold speakers hooked up to like integrated amplifier, right, Rotel amplifier, driving them, and he couldn't tell the difference between that and his Logitech computer speakers. There's like $100. So, I mean, this goes to show, right? Like, a lot of people just can't tell. Like, I showed my friend planar magnetic headphones, right? Dan Clark Audios. It's like maybe like $600. Then he uses AirPods. He couldn't tell the difference. Like, like $80 AirPods, $600 Dan Clark audio planar magnetic headphones. You couldn't tell the difference. Or $100 Logitech speakers, $2,000 monitor audio gold hundreds like bookshelves. You couldn't tell the difference. Like, you know, like there's people out there just, if you're okay with not being able to tell a difference, that's better for your wallet, right? It's the people out there who has a lot of money to spend tons of money on this stuff for kind of like a marginal, almost imperceptible difference in sound that most people would not be able to hear. Basically, is that's essentially it, right? You're paying like this much more for a pickup that goes through your guitar, that goes through cables, that goes through your amplifier, right? So many factors in the sound of a guitar. I know pickups are a major factor in the sound of a guitar, but of course it's going to go through your cables, your pedals, your amplifier, right? Yeah, your strings as well, but yeah, all that. And you're paying hundreds of dollars more for just that imperceptible difference in sound, right? For most people, like basically that's it. Like you're going and you're playing live in a band, you have drummers and everything. Like I highly doubt anyone would be able to tell any kind of difference. You change out the pickups in your guitar, who's going to tell the difference, right? That's the thing. Anyways, it's a bit of my own philosophy on guitar pickups and how the guitar pickup kind of market is exploding, kind of like just the way that the audiophile aftermarket cables and speakers and that kind of market is exploding as well, right? Like aftermarket cables, I would think almost comparable, but not exactly. I do think pickups make a bigger difference, of course, in a guitar than cables do in audio equipment, but yeah, it's kind of, I see the same kind of aftermarket thing, like this aftermarket industry exploding, trying to prey on people and milk people based on marketing, essentially on trying to extract the most money out of people who claim they can hear a difference in sound, is essentially it. But hey, if $2,500 humbucking pickups make you feel better about yourself, then you know, all the power to you. But not for me, at least. And I spent $400 on a pickup set too, so I'm kind of guilty of this as well. But yeah, there's people out there spend $1,000 on these kind of pickups. It's that's beyond me. Can't understand. So yeah, I mean, you can buy a whole new guitar for that money. So another thing I want to talk about is this whole myth of whoever winds pickups must have like this magic to it. So there's some truth in here, but of course there's a lot of myth and exaggeration as well. So let's get it straight out of the way, okay? When someone talks about hand winding pickups, they're talking about someone who's guiding the pickups, like guiding the wire through the pickups through a machine. Like there's still a machine involved. It's a pickup winder, and the hand wound part of it is someone is actually sitting there guiding the wire through like a mechanism through the machine, and in that way it's basically more inconsistent than if a machine does it. So of course you can have a machine do it, and that's the difference between machine wound pickups and hand wound pickups. Is a machine wound pickup, a machine is just automatically doing the entire thing, and there's no human involved at all. Whereas a hand wound or scatter wound pickup basically just means there's a human sitting at a chair somewhere and guiding the wire through some sort of traversal, right? And it's through a pickup winder. And the pickup winders still winding the pickup, so it's still interacting with the machine. They're not manually laying the wires through by hand. There's actually only one pickup maker I know that actually does that, and that's this company or this person. If you look up Zangbucker, Zangbucker is the only one I know that's he sells this line of pickups called pure hand wound. And those are a little bit more expensive, but still actually cheaper than a lot of the pickups in this video. He actually manually guides the wire through the pickup without a machine. And that's pretty incredible. And he's the only one I know that does that. Yeah, Zangbuckers are the only ones that I think are like that. The pure hand wound series. You pay a little bit extra for them. They're still cheaper than what you see here. But it's some guy working there. The person, I guess, is a one-person shop at Zangbucker that actually hand winds all his pickups without a machine. But the rest of the pickup makers, like 99%, they use a machine to do it. They still use a pickup winding machine. They just guide the wire through the machine, and that's called hand wound because it's more inconsistent. Now, is there a certain type of magic that certain winders have? Like personally, like a lot of people want to believe that. Like here, like I'm talking about Abigail Ybarra, right? Abigail Ybarra is, as I said, is this woman who was working at the Fender winding pickups, and she's been doing it since the 1960s. What you have to know is that she's just one of many winders at Fender at the time. There probably wasn't anything particularly special about her technique, but she was working for Fender just a long time. So that's where the myth comes from, is that people, well, actually Fender hypes her up as well as her successor Josefina, who's working at the custom shop now. But basically the hype comes from her winding all the pickups back then, for like famous guitar players. But we don't actually know that, right? Because, okay, all we know is that she was an employee for Fender back in the 1950s, and she was winding pickups back then. But she definitely wasn't the only one winding pickups back then. And plus, after CBS took over Fender in the mid-1960s, they switched to machine wound pickups, which means she wasn't actually hand winding any pickups from the mid-1960s onwards. So it's likely Jimi Hendrix didn't use any of Abigail Ybarra's pickups because those are CBS era pickups, right? However, with the other guitars from like 1950s, you know, I think she started at 1956 or something like that. Anywhere from 1956 to 1965 or 64, she would have wound some of the pickups on those guitars, but we don't know who used them, right? But Fender's marketing is that, oh, she wound the pickups for Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. Well, we know Jimi Hendrix is for sure is not true because they were machine wound for Jimi Hendrix's guitars. But for like Clapton, Jeff Beck, you know, Richie Gilmore, like Richie Blackmore, like David Gilmour, all these other guys, yeah, who knows? She might or might not have, right? She was just one of many winders. But I don't know if there's any kind of secret sauce or recipe. Apparently, she's been training her successor Josefina for many years, and yeah, like I don't know. That's kind of their marketing thing, right? It's like they got to sell these pickups for, they got to like mark them up, right, and sell them for more, and you know, tying her successor Josefina to all these legends and stuff is a way to sell them. It's just marketing. Because, like, let's face it, the truth is, I don't think that there's anything particularly special that any like person has on hand winding a pickup. I mean, how much variation could there be, right? Like, how much difference can there be, well, like between one guy and the next guy, as long as you're doing your job properly, right? As long as you're trained properly to wind pickups, how different can it be between one person and the next? Apparently, there's certain wind patterns, right, that certain pickup winders use, but I don't know about this. Like, at the end of the day, you're just sitting there guiding your finger, guiding the wire, right, through a machine. And is there a big difference between one person doing it and another person doing it? Yeah, Tom Holmes or Ron Ellis, right? Throwback, Abigail Ybarra. All these like really expensive pickups, part of the mystique is that, oh, there's a certain guy winding it that's been known to be really good. Okay. Is there some kind of secret technique that they've known about? I don't know, because I'm sure Abigail Ybarra was just a pickup winder from the 1950s, but I don't think that she had any kind of special technique for doing it. It was just that she did it back then. That's the only thing that's kind of special about her, the mystique, right? So yeah, it's basically about the marketing, right? It's like they have to market these pickups, sell it for more. And boutique winders, especially, if you look at all the third-party winders that I covered in my video before, yeah, like they have to be able to sell their pickups somehow, right, and put a markup on it. And the way they do that is by saying, oh, I have these special fingers and special technique, and I can wind these pickups, you know, better than other people, I guess, and make it sound better. Like, I don't know. Like, they have to wind it to a specific spec, right? Some kind of a rough DC resistance, turns of wire, I guess, is what they would use. They have to wind it to a specific turn of wire, I guess, estimated, right? Turn of wire can't be exact when you're hand winding, but still, they had to wind it to some kind of specification. And yeah, a lot of it is just to me, it's it's a lot of BS in marketing, right? Bill Lawrence, one of the great pickup makers and everything, he kind of debunks a lot of scatterwound type of myth and stuff. But yeah, all these like boutique pickup winders and these really expensive ones, a lot of it is from the mystique and the hype and the whole reputation thing, right? But yeah, I don't know. Like, can you really tell a difference between a Josefina pickup and an Abigail Ybarra pickup and you know, other pickups wound by any other third party like boutique winder? Like, how much of a difference can there be, right? As long as you have the same, let's say you have the same spec Oh, I want a 1954 Stratocaster. Okay, we know it's going to use Alnico 3 or Alnico 5 magnets, and it's going to be roughly around 5.5K to 6K DC resistance per pickup. Okay, and how much variation can there be between these pickups, right? Like, there's very minimal variation. So, yeah, you know, how much variation can there really be, right? You're using, I guess you're using plain enamel, not plain enamel, you're using form bar wire for the 1950s. Okay, that's another thing. So they all use form bar wire. They're all between 5.5K to 6.K DC resistance. And they're all going to use Alnico 3, Alnico 5 magnets. Okay, so they have a lot of things in common. How much real difference is there in like hand winding these pickups? Lindy Frelin, Jason Lawler, or Bare Knuckle, Seymour Duncan, like how much difference is there between all these pickups, assuming that they're around the same spec, right? I don't think it can be that much, because you're talking about. I know, of course, if you're hand winding it, there's could be a limitless amount of patterns you can use, but still, at the end of the day, you had to wind it to a specific resistance, and as long as you're competent at winding, everyone should be getting to approximately, you know, similar kind of winds, I think. So I don't know. A lot of this hand wound stuff, I know I have hand wound pickups, but it's not like I care about like who really does the hand winding. Like for this Abigail Ybarra, Tom Holmes stuff, Ron Ellis, like you know, Virgil Arlo, like these guys, like a lot of it's like a hype thing, right? Like, oh, what makes them so special about winding? They do have kind of magical powers that make them wind better than other pickup makers do? No, right? It's just a lot of the hype and reputation and myth that leads them to charge. You can find a lot of these pickups for really absurd prices, right? So yeah, for that, I mean, I'm not against hand wound pickups, of course. Like, I think hand wound pickups are cool. You can see that they have craftsmanship involved, I guess, because it's manual labor by one person. But so in that sense, I guess, yeah, it's more of a personal connection with a pickup, because compared to a machine wound pickup, hand wound pickup kind of has like a more unique characteristic because it's by a person. It's tied to a human person. So there's that aspect of it. And yes, I guess if the coils are not uniformly wound, then you can get more like peak resonance or like more harmonics and stuff like that, more dynamics supposedly. Just like, you know, not wax potting it would lead to more dynamics and stuff. So yeah, sure, maybe there's a little bit of difference there. So I'm not saying hand wound is bad or anything. I'm just saying that for people who are looking at this and they're thinking, oh, Abigail Ybarra, Tom Holmes, Ron Ellis, Virgil Arlo, they must be very, like, their pickups are expensive because they're, you know, better than other people hand winding. Like, no, I don't believe that. Like, no, I think that all the hand wound pickups should roughly be similar to each other. For machine wound and hand wound, okay, there maybe is a difference, maybe like a minor difference, but there's a difference between hand wound and machine wound, a little bit, but still maybe some difference there. But between one hand wound pickup and another hand wound pickup of similar specifications, that's where I kind of be like, yeah, maybe not really, right? You have roughly the similar specifications between the pickups, right? Given you have two 1954 Strat pickups by different manufacturers, or two 1969 Strat pickups by different manufacturers. How different can they be, right? You're using the same wire, you're using like roughly the same DC resistance, you're using the same magnets. Like, just how different can you wind them to be actually different, right? So that's what I'm talking about here. Not that there isn't a difference between hand wound and machine wound. I'm sure there is a little bit, but yeah, and plus you have the personal connection. I get that, but the difference between one hand wound pickup and another pickup, this is something that's a little bit more harder to tell, right? That's where I'm like, okay, go check out a 1954 by Lindy Frelin and compare it to a Lawler Blonde or Lawler Tweed. You know, is there that much of a difference between the two? Because these are both like hand wound pickups by different people, but they're roughly similar specs. So, and you have a cottage industry essentially of third-party pickup makers out there, like one or two people, a small team winding pickups, and how different can they be from each other? And compared to a bare knuckle Apache or Sultan as well, you know, compare all these pickups to each other. If they're roughly similar specifications, I don't see how they could be that different. So yeah, I'm just talking about this this assumption, this myth that there is some kind of magic between different pickup winders. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure about that, right? If one pickup maker has necessarily more magic than another pickup winder. Yeah, as long as you have two hand wound pickups of similar specifications, they should sound similar to each other. I don't believe the wind pattern can be that different between one pickup and another to make that big of a difference. Like, sure, there's variations, but how much of a difference does it make, right? That's the thing. Like, yeah, every winder has their own pattern, but how different does that actually, how different does that sound actually result in, right? Given that you have similar magnets, similar wire, like similar DC resistance. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I want to talk about. So again, with the Abigail Ybarra stuff, if you want to pay thousands of dollars, sorry, if you want to pay thousands of dollars for an Abigail Ybarra, you sure can. But again, a lot of that is just based on the hype and the myth here. So again, I don't think there's any kind of special magic that one pickup winder has over another. I agree, machine wound and hand wound, there's a bit of a difference, but between two hand wound pickups of similar specs, yeah, I don't believe there can be that much difference between them. So anyways, that's just my personal philosophy on that. But hey, they can charge a lot of money. Tim Shaw winds humbucker, winds some pickups. Well, actually designed. He doesn't even wind pickups. He designed some pickups for Fender, and they have to advertise them. Like Tim Shaw designed, because he's kind of a known pickup guru, just like Tom Holmes. And like, as long as they put the guy's name, they must be like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing and stuff. But hey, if you're properly trained to wind pickups, like, I don't know, how much mystique can there be, right? Yeah, it's just my thinking. Yes, I understand. Designing pickups is a different matter. Designing a new pickup, that takes time and effort. That takes R&D. But if you're just winding a typical humbucker PAF or a typical Stratocaster or Telecaster pickup, you already know the specs online. There's tons of takes on these pickups already. Everyone already knows the specs of these pickups. So how different can they be from each other, right? I've already seen a million different PAF replicas, a million different Stratocaster sets, 1959 Steve Ray Vaughan, 1969 Hendrix. I've seen a tons of different options for these similar types of pickups. How much variation can there be between the two? Someone should do a shootout, maybe, right? I'm personally curious. Have a D. Allen pickup versus a Klein. Yeah, the D. Allen Strat Cat versus the Klein Jazzy Cats. I'm curious about that. They're both like kind of mid-scooped John Mayer type pickups, right? And then compare that to the PRS Silver Sky pickup, the PRS John Mayer pickup, and compare that to the Big Dippers by Fender. That'll be interesting. But how different could it be? Yeah. Anyways, that's my personal philosophy on this. I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars more for a particular pickup maker. I just think that I'm just going to get a hand wound pickup, and as long as it meets my specs, that's all that matters. I'm not going to care too much exactly who winds it. I don't think there can be too much difference, but hey, some people believe this stuff. So anyways, just like how people believe that different cables for your audio gear make a difference. USB cables, even like they think different HDMI cables, different USB cables can make a difference. Digital cables, even. I don't believe that. I mean, digital is digital, right? How can there be a difference in audio from digital cables? I mean, audio analog cables maybe, but that's minimal, right? The only thing that really should matter is the capacitance of the cable. That's really it. But yeah, I don't know. Somebody let me know, right? Can you tell a difference between all these different kinds of pickups? Can you tell a difference between two different 1954 Strat pickups, a pure vintage, let's say like this, a Fender Custom Shop 1954 pickup versus actually that's a machine wound pickup, isn't it? Yeah, let's compare that to like one of the boutique pickups from Seymour Duncan or Fralin or Lindy Fralin, Lawler, or Klein or Bare Knuckle or anyone else, right? Compare them, right? How much difference can there be between the same model year of Strat pickups, right? 1954. Just focus on that. How much variation can there be in sound, right? Can you tell the difference between 99.99% oxygen-free copper and in silver plated, cables? Like, can you tell the difference between that? This audio stuff is just kind of ridiculous with how picky people can get about these things, and yeah, it just goes way too much into it. It's really a rabbit hole, and it's too much of a rabbit hole in my opinion. So, anyways, that's my thoughts on this about different pickup winders. I really don't think there's that much of a difference between hand wound pickups, in my opinion. Yeah, just go with any winder that you trust. Okay, that's it. Go with my advice for getting hand wound pickups, aftermarket hand wound pickups. Just go with a winder you trust. I don't think there's that much of a difference. Yeah, already some Fender custom shop guitars, master built guitars already come with hand wound pickups. That's fine. But if you're just looking for upgrading your guitar with a hand wound pickup, just look for one that's to your spec. I wouldn't care too much about who makes it, because I think that there can't be too much difference between these hand wound pickups, right? As long as these builders are trusted, and there's a lot of trusted builders out there, as long as you trust these pickup winders, and there's so many of them out there, right? Yeah, as long as they're trusted, and I don't think there's any too much of a difference between them. I personally use Rumpelstiltskins in my Strats, in my TB Jones, because their TB Jones is kind of focused on Filtertron type pickups. But yeah, for my Strats, I could have gone with anyone for my Stratocasters, my Stratocaster pickups. But I chose Rumpelstiltskin just because he was kind of a regular on the forum I was on at the time. But you know, I could have gone with anyone else. Lawler, Frillin, Bare Knuckle, any one of these other guys would be fine too. I don't think there's too much of a difference. If you're looking for aftermarket hand wound pickups, I wouldn't focus too much on the brand or who actually winds them. I would focus more on the specs that you want out of it, and just find one that's within your budget. I think that's more important than who exactly winds them. So yeah, D. Allen, Klein. It doesn't matter. There's a million different aftermarket pickup makers out there. I already had a 6-hour video on this, going through everyone that I could find. So I'm sure they're all good. There's no yeah. If you gotta be competent in order to have a pickup winding business. You can't suck, right? So as long as you have a pickup winding business, you're online out there, and some people have talked about you somewhat, then yeah, it's trustworthy enough. You can just try it, and I wouldn't worry too much about who exactly winds them. Should be all pretty similar as long as they're similar specs. So that's it. Anyways, hope you guys thanks for listening to that little rant, and yeah, it's my thoughts on different pickup winders. Oh yeah, forgot about this one as well, but this is a very limited edition pickup. It is a Seymour Duncan hand-wound Jimi Hendrix Strat pickup set. And so the thing is, Seymour Duncan, he owns one of the biggest aftermarket pickup shops. So I think when you think of aftermarket pickups, Seymour Duncan, DiMarzio, maybe EMG, and Fender and Gibson, of course. These are the names that generally pop up because they're the biggest aftermarket pickup makers. Seymour Duncan, he's been around for a long time. He's been winding pickups since the 60s, I believe. Started his shop in the 70s. He's a big player in the aftermarket pickup industry, basically one of the pioneers. He doesn't really wind pickups anymore by hand because, well, he has such a big shop. And most of the time, his pickups are going to be either machine wound, or if they are scatter wound or hand wound, it's usually the Antiquity pickups that are like that. I think it's one of his workers that does that. So he doesn't really hand wind pickups much anymore, but there are occasions where he does something special, like this one, this limited edition set where he made, I think, about 30-something sets of hand wound Jimi Hendrix pickups, and he actually wound these himself. So that's why they're very limited edition, because they're actually wound by him, and that's very rare because Seymour Duncan, I don't know when he stopped winding, but certainly he has not been hand winding his pickups for a long time because he has such a big shop now. So to have hand wound pickups by him, I guess, yeah, so this says less than 40. So I think it was 30-something sets of these Jimi Hendrix Strat pickups that he wound himself. So these are different than the Jimi Hendrix Strats pickup set that he sells on his website. Those are actually, I think, probably machine wound. These ones he wound himself, Seymour Duncan wound himself. So yeah, that doesn't happen very often. These are very limited edition. That's why you see them selling for $1,000 US. You don't see very many of them on sale either, because there's 30-something sets. They're very limited, very hard to find. They're kind of, well, they're definitely unique for Strat pickups because the stagger for the magnets is reversed because they're trying to duplicate that Hendrix sound. So Jimi Hendrix played with a reverse, kind of a reverse string Strat. So he took a right-handed Stratocaster, he flipped it upside down, and he kind of put the strings actually normally, but in a sense that's reversed, right? So that's why a lot of pickup makers who are trying to get that Jimi Hendrix type of tone, they had the reverse headstock. You got to reverse the headstock, and then you also got to reverse the pickup positions as well. You got to reverse the magnets, and then you got to also reverse the bridge pickup, because they would be actually opposite when Hendrix played them. So from a right-handed player, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So most people are right-handed, right? When they play right-handed Strat, you actually have to reverse the magnets. Staggers, you got to reverse the staggers, you got to reverse the bridge pickup slant, and you got to reverse your headstock in order to kind of get the same setup that Jimi Hendrix had. I don't know how much of a difference that makes. I mean, maybe it makes like a minor, very minor difference, because the E string is like longer than before. The E string has like a little bit more tension. The low E string I'm talking about. The low E string has more tension, and the high E string has less tension compared to normal, because you're using the reverse headstock and then having the reverse slant here. Yeah, if you have this reverse slant, the lower E string is going to sound a little bit brighter. High E string is going to sound a little bit like darker, I guess, but it's a very minor difference. Again, if they want to make this Jimi Hendrix association, I think this is what they did with this Strat set, is kind of make it a little bit unique by reverse staggering the magnets and reversing the bridge pickup and reversing the magnets, so that you get the Jimi Hendrix setup for a right-handed player. Yeah, basically the reason why this is so expensive is because they're limited edition, hand-wound by Seymour Duncan himself, who is basically a legend in the pickup industry, who doesn't really hand-wind pickups much anymore. But yeah, is it worth the money? Again, I think you guys have already, you guys know my take on this. It's like, for me, no. I don't think there's anything that special or different about one pickup winder versus another pickup winder if you're making it to the similar spec. So for me, whether Seymour Duncan is winding it or someone else is winding it, or one of his workers is winding it, doesn't make too much of a difference to me. Hand wound is hand wound to me. It's like you have his workers do it or you have Seymour Duncan do it. It shouldn't make too much of a difference to me. But I guess in this case, if you want to have this, it's really a collector's piece, right? It's like having an Abigail Ybarra wound Strat set, right? It's a collector's piece because essentially she doesn't wind any more pickups, so those are all limited edition. And Seymour Duncan doesn't wind anymore. Well, he doesn't really mind any more pickups unless it's for something like this, very limited edition stuff. So really it's for collectors, right? You can say, hey, I have a set of pickups wound by Abigail Ybarra. I have a set of pickups wound by Seymour Duncan, and there's a limited number of them because they don't really wind pickups anymore. And they have a reputation in the industry. And really, this goes back to my reputation thing, where you're paying essentially for the reputation and for the collectability of it. You're paying this premium because it's wound by Seymour Duncan. And it's kind of like when people pay a lot of money for a guitar that was like used one time by a guitar hero, like for example, okay, let's take Eric Clapton or Slash or somebody who's used a lot of guitars, right? Hendrix. Okay, Jimi Hendrix, he used just pretty much any off-the-shelf stock Strat until his last 2 years. His last 2 years, he basically just used two Stratocasters, which was 1968 Stratocasters, actually, not 1969. He had a black one and a white one, but for most of his career, Hendrix actually just took stock Strats, and he destroyed a lot of them, and stuff. So he really didn't care, I don't think, too much about like picking which guitar to use. But nowadays, if you find a guitar that was used, one time by a guitar legend, Kurt Cobain used this Mustang, or Hendrix used the Strat, Clapton used the Strat, it's gonna fetch a lot of money, right? And there's nothing inherently special about those guitars that are different other than just who played them. So you're paying a lot of money just because of the association with that legend. And similarly for this pickup set, you're paying for the association of having Seymour Duncan wind it. So that's really what it's about. And I know this is true for Tom Holmes, Abigail Ybarra, and Virgil Arlo, all those guys I talked about already. You're paying that money, that premium for that association, right? So yeah, it's similar to how people pay tens of thousands of dollars, right, or hundreds of thousands of dollars for a guitar that a legend had played before, and it doesn't, not necessarily like something he's played for a long time, just something that they're associated with. And it's the same here, right? he hand wound these pickups. Okay, yeah, that's limited, and he's a legend in the pickup industry, so that's why it costs so much money. So, anyways, it's another one I wanted to talk about because this one is very limited edition. But I guess you can say the same thing about, you know, Abigail Ibarra and like Tom Holmes and all these other guys that I already went through. Like, yeah, these are pretty much all limited edition because they're wound by guys that are no longer winding, really. Yeah, Abigail, of course, she's retired. Abigail Ibarra is retired. Josephina has taken over, so you can still find Josephina pickups, but Abigail Ibarra pickups are very limited. Seymour Duncan, obviously very limited because he doesn't really hand wind pickups anymore. And then, yeah, Tom Holmes and all these guys like Virgil Arlo, yeah, they're not winding pickups anymore, really. So you're paying a lot of money for those pickups. So really, it's just the association with these guys, the reputation, that makes it so expensive. So anyways, I just want to talk about this pickup set as well. The one that Seymour Duncan hand wound, Jimi Hendrix pickups that he did only like 30 something sets, and very limited, and of course they're going to be expensive because they're tied to Seymour Duncan. So yep, just want to mention those these ones as well. So anyways, guys, that's just my thoughts on overpriced guitar pickups. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, if you agree or disagree with my little philosophy here. My little rant. Yeah, so guys, as always, thanks for watching.